Joining me now is Heather Conley. She's the president of the German Marshall Fund. She's also a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs, where she co-led U.S. interagency efforts to enlarge NATO. Heather, these developments overnight, I want to first of all get your take on this. When you look at that map of where that attack took place, it says everything you need to say. That spot, that dot 12 miles from Poland could very easily be Poland, and that changes the game. So first of all, tell me about the fact that these attacks are not about Vladimir Putin going into eastern Ukraine and protecting Russian speakers from a genocide that he provided no evidence of. They are now attacking western Ukraine on the NATO borders.
Absolutely. And in some ways, it's surprising that this hasn't happened earlier, because obviously, as we're now entering day 18 of a conflict that Russia thought they could seize in 2 days, they are getting bogged down, and they are trying to end the supply lines. This is a major move to say, look, we are not going to stand for humanitarian and certainly lethal military equipment to continue to flow from the West into for Ukrainian forces. So this is why, Ali, that on this coming week, on the 18th, NATO is going to hold an extraordinary meeting, an in-person meeting of NATO defense ministers. You will see some very forward-leaning announcements, I'm sure, to what we call thicken that defensive line, the eastern flank on NATO, and probably providing some additional air defense capabilities. Last week, 2 Patriot batteries being moved to the Polish border. You're going to see more of this. We have to protect those supply lines to keep supplying the Ukrainian military to fight against these Russian forces.
And you said the supply lines. That Vladimir Putin said yesterday, the supply lines are targets, and that's exactly what happened. This was a supply corridor. I guess I want to ask you, from a NATO perspective, what's the difference between a deliberate attack and an accidental attack that gets near NATO soil? Because this is real close. I assume that everybody who fires missiles has an ability to target them exactly to where they want them targeted. But boy, Poland's nervous right now, and that was really close.
Well, again, what has already happened, Poland can, what we call Article 4 in NATO, which is a consultation process, meaning, okay, if this missile came extremely close to our border, we want an immediate consultation with other NATO allies. That will protect, I think it will mean we're going to flow more defensive equipment to Poland, perhaps to the Baltic states. But what's very clear is that the alliance has to work together on this. This is not an independent decision per se that Poland would make. That's what makes us so strong at 30 countries. It also, those decisions are more challenging at 30. But again, the alliance is very focused on ensuring that they're backing up their words, that they will defend every inch of NATO territory, that this is not in question. But Russian artillery is firing now, of course, very close to the Polish border. I think that those open lines of communication that General Milley has opened with the Russian chief of the General Forces, General Gerasimov, will have to open once again and have to communicate very clearly that if they get closer to this, they are now edging to something that they do not want.
Heather, this is a military installation that we're looking at that was targeted. However, as you get that close to the border, you have lineups on our side here, where Hungary is. On the Polish side, there are people who are lined up for hours and hours and hours to get through. It sounds like a different world, but are those people, those Ukrainians trying to get out of their country, at risk of attacks by Russian forces as they're trying to get out?
Well, we've certainly seen where Russian forces have attacked, during ceasefires to allow humanitarian corridors to happen. So, yes, again, anything to do to create chaos in lines of communication. So civilians fleeing conflict can also cause a lot of disruption to those important supply lines. So, yes, it's certainly not inconceivable that Russia would do this. I mean, the crimes against humanity, the attacks on hospitals, on civilians. We understand that, Vladimir Putin will not stop. There is nothing that is in his way of decency that he won't do. So in many ways, we have to expand our own imagination and, again, protect those supply lines, protect NATO borders and continue the flow of supplies into Ukraine. I'll say this again, the longer that the Ukrainians can resist this brutality, the stronger we get every day as the West. And we, as Bill Taylor said earlier in your program, this is a fight we cannot afford to lose. And the Ukrainians are fighting so valiantly for all of our values. This is what this is about. So as we are struck by every, extraordinary crime that the Russian forces commit, we have to keep our eye on the prize, and that the West has to win this fight, and Ukraine is fighting for our values.
Heather, thanks for your analysis and your expertise. Heather Conley is the German Marshall Fund president.